Hi, welcome back to my novel writing tips series. This is episode 2 where I'm going to be discussing plot and characters. So the reason I wanted to discuss plot and characters together is because they both go hand in hand. One drives the other. And it's very difficult to talk about plot without your characters and vice versa because they affect each other. And it's very, very important that we discuss both of these. Let's discuss plot first. Plot, put simply, is what is happening in your story. What is the main idea? Because when somebody asks you about your plot, they don't necessarily care about all the little details, but what is the story? A kingdom is at war and they need this hero to save them. Kat really wants her ball and she's looking all over for it. I really want a donut and I need to convince myself it's okay to have a donut. Anything like that. And if you notice, plots are usually, they have a lot to do with the characters because a lot of plots are character driven. And so that's why we were talking about both together. So a pretty typical thing that I read and I hear is that I worry that my idea is not original. And I'm here to tell you that pretty much no idea is original. It's all about the execution. And this is because there's only a few basic plots that actually exist. So the three basic plots, and there are more nowadays, but they're all variations of the main three, are man versus nature, man versus man, and boy meets girl. They're all variations of those three. And you'll see, I think maybe Kurt Vonnegut and some other people, they have ones where there's more like basic story structures than just those three. But pretty typically you can see that they fall into one of those three categories to some extent. Like I've seen man versus society, animals versus man, that type of thing. But it's still the same kind of concept. And so you just kind of figure, all right, basically what is my thing? Am I having a person go against sort of a natural force? Am I having them go against another intelligent being or a construct of an intelligent being? Or is my story more of a love story? And often you'll find too that it's usually a combination of them, which is perfectly fine. That happens all the time. So how do you develop your plot? Well, in my personal experience, it helps to actually know who some of your characters might be. You can work from a plot first and then figure out who your characters are. I work usually the opposite. I work from my characters first and then I build a plot around them. Neither way is wrong. It's just personal preference. But I like to do it characters first because I try to figure out, okay, who's my character and what do they want and what's going to get in their way. And if you do from plot first, it's more, what is the overall idea of this? And okay, who can I put in here to carry this plot forward? Neither way is wrong. So your characters, both your antagonists and your protagonists, want something. They want something. They have a goal or a desire. It can be super basic, like I want a donut. I want a donut. That's my basic desire. Or it can be, I need to find the Holy Grail and save my country. It can be super grand. It can be super simple. But I want something. Or the character wants something. And then usually the antagonist's goal is in conflict with the protagonist's goal to some degree. And you may not, and you don't have to reveal that necessarily right away, but you need to have some conflict right away to what the protagonist's goal is. So for example, I want a donut, but I'm on a diet. So I cannot have a donut unless I want to feel guilty. So how do I go about getting a donut? Well, there's a bunch of different ways I could go about getting a donut. I could just say, heck with my diet, I'm just going to go eat a donut. I could decide, well, maybe if I exercise, I can reward myself with a donut. That'd be great. Well, what if I decided to exercise and I decided to go running. And I haven't gone running in a very long time. And I'm running and it's really hard. And a dog comes up and steals my shoe. And so I'm hopping along, trying to find this dog and find my shoe so I can keep running, or at least get back home, so I can get my donut. So you can see, it can be super simple. Like, I just the heck with it. No. Mary wanted a donut, but Mary's on a diet. Mary ate a donut anyway. The end. That's a very short story, but it's got a plot, it's got a character, it's got a goal, a conflict, you know, it has a resolution. Perfect. Story, simple, done. Doesn't have to be big, but you can stretch it out and be like, all right, what else, you know, how is she going to try to eat this donut, you know, and justify it and all that. And there's lots of different ways you can go about it. So this is where you can see how developing your characters and figuring out what they want and what they might do to achieve their goal would be very interesting. So talking specifically about characters now, how to develop them, you know, how to figure out how to write them and keep people interested. Characters, obviously they need their goal, they need their desire, their wants. So antagonists, they want something else. It may be as simple as, I want to destroy humanity because I'm evil. It's not a very good motivation, but it's a goal, which conflicts with protagonist, who's like, I'm part of humanity, I don't want to die. But every character has a goal to some extent. And the way your character becomes interesting is how they go about trying to reach this goal. And that's where you really want to try to develop, you know, your character's strengths, their weaknesses. Do they have any unique abilities? And all those sorts of things. And you want to have a good balance because that makes it interesting. So let's say you have, you know, your typical detective character. Now, this detective could be very good guy, very by the book, and he does things by the book, even if it's hard, even if it's, you know, not what his fellow officers are telling him to do. Like, oh, hey, no, it's fine. Like, just do it off the books. You'll be fine. He's like, no, I got to do this. And you can have a character like that, but it might be more interesting if it's like, well, and this is why a lot of detective shows, they usually have a little bit of a history. Either they have something bad in their past, or maybe they're a little corrupt, or they don't always go by the book. Maybe they'll beat up a suspect when they probably shouldn't. Maybe they're blind, or maybe they're deaf. They have maybe a physical flaw that makes their job more difficult or makes them more interesting. So you have the flaws. So you want to give them a flaw that can be kind of interesting. And you don't necessarily want it to be a flaw that doesn't actually do anything, or a flaw that isn't actually a flaw, like, oh, she's too pretty. That's her flaw. That's not a flaw. But you also want to give them strengths too. So maybe this detective is blind, but he's also really smart. Like, he has trouble. He can't see things, but he can deduce things really well. You know, things to balance it out. Maybe me, who, like I said, you know, I want a donut, but my flaw is I want to exercise so I can get that donut, but my flaw is that I am really, really out of shape and I don't know how to run right, and so running does not go well for me. And it's how I triumph over that action. You know, how do I still overcome my badness at running so I can still exercise and get that donut? It's interesting, more interesting than I'm just gonna go eat a donut. It's fine, whatever. But yeah, so you want to give them strengths and weaknesses, flaws, and all of that to make them more relatable, more interesting, keep people coming back for more. Like, ooh, I know that this character has a really short temper. Ooh, they're going to meet with this person who's really going to piss them off in like a chapter. I'm interested to see where this goes. Ooh, that could be really cool. And that's another thing. Beyond flaws and like personal things, stuff in their history, their backstory that also gives them, character traits. What if they had a really bad experience with spiders? And you as the reader know that there's going to be spiders in this house that this person's going into, and you're like, uh-oh, how are they going to deal with that? That's interesting. That's really cool. And you want to keep reading more. And some of that goes along with how you're setting up your story, and I'll probably talk about that in a later video, how to keep the tension up in your story. So a very good test to test your characters, if you are worried that you have a character who is too perfect, is something called the Mary Sue litmus test. And oh my goodness, there's a huge debate about this online, whether it's a good test or not a good test. I like to think of it as a good waste of time. I think every teenager should take this test with their characters because, oh my gosh, they'll check so many of the boxes. Just type it into Google. And it was originally made, I think, for a fan fiction type thing, but it works for regular fiction too. And it's basically trying to make sure that your character doesn't have too many flaws or too many unique snowflake type things about them. And it's not going to save your character if they're not written well or if they're obnoxious. And sometimes your character may have all these things and they're super well written, so it doesn't necessarily matter. But it's a fun little test to do. It's a good little procrastination thing that I find really fun. And I think it's particularly useful if you're creating a fantasy setting, because this applies a lot to fantasy where you can pretty much do whatever you want. I don't find it to be as applicable to more real world type things. I write historical romance, and it wasn't very applicable. Like, my character wasn't a Mary Sue, but I don't know how many things I could have necessarily checked on that list. So it's not foolproof, and a lot of writers think that it's a really dumb test. And I don't blame them, because it is kind of a really dumb test, but I find it fun. But yeah, so I hope this was a little bit useful for developing your plot and your characters, just some basics. And if you have any questions or comments or anything like that, down in the description or down in the comments, let me know. I will get back to you. You can definitely ask me anything like specific about your story. I have no problem. I can look at it and be like, yeah, that sounds cool. Or, well, maybe, I try to be nice. I'm blunt, but I'm nice, if that makes sense. But yeah, so hopefully this was useful for basic character and plot information. I don't quite know what my topic of my next video will be, but I'll have that up probably within a few weeks. I'm also going to try to do some more book reviews because I have been querying my novel and trying to write another one. I get in different moods where sometimes I want to write and sometimes I want to read, and they don't always mesh. So I'm going to try to do some more book reviews for my subscribers. So thank you for your patience. And again, I hope those of you who are watching this just for the novel writing tips, I hope you enjoyed this and found it helpful. And of course, if you have any criticisms or, again, comments or questions, leave them down in the comment section and I will address it. All right, thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye.